Sound check. Everything good? I hope also the people on Zoom can hear us. So here's Julius from Pigs for the Agriculture, and with me is Nathan Stein from Airstrike Ag. And today we have a really intense 2-hour session, Pigs for the Fields mapping. So it will not be all just slides. We will dive right into the software, into the nitty-gritty details, and geek a bit out with you. If you have questions, we try to take them, but again, we only have 2 hours. So,
can people put questions through Zoom? Will you see their questions?
I think you can try to put also your questions through Zoom, and then from time to time we can refer to them, yes. So let's quickly go over the agenda for today. So as always, it's not only about the software, it's also about like how to actually acquire the data. So we have to spend some time on what type of drones are useful for mapping, about things like RTK, the mapping settings, and so on. And afterwards, we will go into the details. And before we start with that, we have only 2 hours. So if you are interested in like really learning that thing, then you should get yourself on an in-person course, for example, with Airstrike Ag, because you need at least, I would say, a full day to really grasp it and do it in the field. So we can only kind of tease you today, but we will try our best to tease you right. So, so Nathan, what do you think? We have an agenda, as always. I would say we kind of just go freestyle and see where it's going, right? So I think the first thing we want to ask you is...
I guess I was kind of curious. I need to talk in the mic. One of the questions that kind of came to mind talking to a lot of people at the conference is what are the products that you're using today from Pix4D? Because I think there's still a lot of misconceptions out there of the products that are available and which products do what. So could I get a show of hands? Who uses Pix4D Mapper? Pix4D Mapper. Okay, that's what the map. All right. How about Pix4D Fields? Fields.
Great.
Okay. Does anybody use Pix4D Matic? Matic. I feel like I'm at a bingo. How about Pix4D Catch? Pix4D Capture. Capture? Does anybody use it on the cell phone? Capture? Okay, it's different. And then what would be? Capture app, right?
Yeah,
yep.
For the flight planning.
For the flight planning. And then there's Pix4D Catch, right? And Pix4D Cloud. Is everybody Pix4D confused? All right, good, good. So I kind of had a hunch that that was probably part of the things that happened here. We are going to speak about Pix4D Fields, and what you need to understand is that Mapper, which was the original product that had come from Pix4D, which most people, when they say Pix4D, they mean Pix4D Mapper typically. There's a difference between the programs. Pix4D Mapper takes a while and it makes point clouds, and it does have some ag tools in it, but Pix4D Fields is a newer software with a different philosophy for operation. It's much faster, and it processes still locally on your computer. It just doesn't take nearly as much time. There are still 3D mapping opportunities in Pix4D Fields. We'll talk about that here briefly and touch on those things. I just wanted to be clear, there is a difference between Mapper and Fields. So check your computer when you get home, because some people still call and they say, I'm using Pix4D Fields and I can't figure out, you know, such and such, and I realize you're actually using Pix4D Mapper. So sorry again for all the confusion. If you're confused, still like come up and talk to us afterwards. I think it's an important thing to talk about though.
Okay, now I would say we already fire up some processing, some live processing, as I promised in my talk earlier today. So it's not only just fancy marketing slides, it actually works in real life. So we did our in-person training on the Golf Coast Research Center on Saturday, and we acquired some data. Actually, it was quite a big data set because we mapped the whole site. So that's what we now will import in Pix4D Fields and process in a few minutes. So I go here, select the folder. So this folder has the images inside. You won't see them, but trust me, they're inside. You will see it in just a few seconds. I select here the JPEG images, so that was our beloved M3M multispectral. It takes multispectral images and RGB images. We will now process the RGB images so we get a nice crisp image of the scene. So, and here we need to emphasize this is importing, this is not uploading. A lot of you are already naming it uploading. We are not uploading anything, so this is locally. So there's no internet required, so it all happens here on the machine. There's no cloud, no Amazon, nothing. This is your data, and it's processed locally. It doesn't need any internet. So it presents us with a bunch of processing options. Your number one choice in 80% of the cases should be the fast processing, because it's a super fast and you actually don't need anything else. The accurate processing is only if you want to do elevation stuff, like if you want to have high resolution elevation models, then you choose accurate. For everything else, fast. The geolocation is about the same and is like 10x faster. Okay, I'm fine, so there's actually nothing I need to do. I just need to hit apply and start processing, and now it will import, not upload, it will import the single images, and you can already see that it basically overlays the images with each other and stitches it. So you see that will take right about 1 minute, and that's 150 acre. Yeah. So I think while it's processing, we should talk a bit about the type of drones you might use for mapping. And I think Nathan knows best what type of drones you should use. So Nathan, please tell us what kind of drones are out there and what should you use for Pix4D fields?
Yeah, so how many people have like a Mavic type deal? Yeah, fair majority. Anybody have anything fixed wing? Bigger aircraft? Okay. What would be the difference between a quadcopter and a fixed wing? Besides price difference oftentimes, right? Ground speed differences, yes. So some of the things we're going to look at for a quadcopter, right? We can hover, we can take pictures, we can take videos, we can inspect. That's really helpful for our spray drone operations. So oftentimes that's why spray drone operators have a small quadcopter. They work very well for this. However, if you're going to fly a large area, what would be a good aircraft to choose possibly? Like a Wingtra or a Quantum or something like that, or a SenseFly, right? You're going to fly a lot more acres with a lot less battery. You're going to have an hour flight time or something like that, or an hour and a half flight time. But that's more of a Texas-sized drone, right? That's going to get something covered and get something done. The smaller quadcopters are about 160 acres per flight, roughly. So they're also going to give you a fairly decent resolution, almost all of them. Although some of those bigger systems are going to give you a much higher resolution depending on the camera that they have.
So yeah, here just a few examples. So like entry grade quadcopter would be like a Mini 4, Mini 4 Pro. I think there's a main downside is that you don't have the flight planning software. So those drones don't come with flight planning, so you cannot really do the missions in a way we need for stitching. So that then starts with like the mid-level, and that's your typical Mavic 3 type of series. It's a very, very good drone, has everything you actually need. And as Nathan told you, if you want to do more serious mapping, you would go for a Wingtra or a Centera drone or even a Matrice 350. But they are much more expensive. You see here the price range. It starts maybe at 8K, goes up to 100K, and mainly the sensor is what makes those systems very expensive. Also harder to deploy, harder to operate. So yeah, depends how serious you want to get. I think for most of us here in the room, the M3M type of drone is the best drone, and especially if you want to get started. Yeah, that's also our recommendation. Okay, now comes a topic that is actually very important, and that is GPS accuracy and RTK. And I think I and Nathan, we spend a lot of time discussing this topic, but he always wins our arguments, so he takes that.
So I think the most thing to emphasize in GPS accuracy is, you know, how close can we get to the mark? And honestly, any GPS system is going to be, you know, maybe a few meters off, but when it comes to, you know, pinpoint accuracy, what you see happening here, and I'm coming from a survey background, I really want to see, you know, hitting that spot perfectly, like an airstrike, right? We don't want to miss the target. So we want to hit that and do it with precision. You're only going to achieve this with RTK. But more importantly, if you're going to use this in your spray drone operation, what's a possible situation that could cause trouble for you guys? Is anybody aware of it? Well, yeah, the answer to all problems is high tension power lines or power lines in general, right? That's what we're trying to avoid, and that's really the number one reason of problems here. But the thing is if we're mixing accuracies, whether it's RTK and then GPS, or we're using two different base stations in two different areas with completely different datums or survey coordinates in them, what could possibly happen to our drone? Yeah, we could have misalignment, even an offset, and so that one power line we thought was here is now here in our spray drone is flying right into that power line, right? So we want to use the same source if we're going to do this. So my point is if you're using a CORS network or a DigiFarm or something like that, keep using that throughout the project. Don't be switching back and forth. Don't use your base station and then go and switch to that. You're going to have problems. If you want to understand a little more about that, we can talk after. We won't go into total detail here, but I really think GPS, if you're just using regular GPS, you're still going to have those drift issues, north, south, east, or west, and it's anybody's guess which way it's going. And if you get double the offset from two different aircrafts, you could possibly be off as much as 2 meters. That's a fair amount, right? So keep that in mind when you're doing things. The M3M comes standard with an RTK, so go ahead and use it, right?
Okay, now maybe as a German perspective, let's formalize it a bit so we can now all sort our things and know our bearings. So, I mean, if you have a non-RTK drone, right, you cannot really do things in the physical world with the data. So you should not transfer to a tractor, you should not transfer to a spray drone to do stuff. But what you can do is you can find stuff out. You can use it for scouting. You can use it to find relative differences. You can do it to, basically create a damage report. For example, if you have green snap or something like that. For that, you don't need RTK because the map in itself is accurate, but only its position in the physical world will not be where to be expected. And for that, yes, for that you need RTK. So if you want to fly a spray drone mission or do like spot spraying with a sprayer, you need RTK because each pixel in the map needs to be in the real world physical location. Otherwise, you won't have mismatches. I mean, you can get around with it if you buffer the data a lot, but that kind of defies the purpose. So, just get yourself an RTK drone and everything is kind of fine.
Did you want to check on the project to see if it was done?
Yeah. But are you saying, so the map, I sell all map preamps with RTK, obviously, but I don't always sell RTK with spray drones. Are you saying if I use RTK on the mapping, I should then upgrade the RTK on the spray drones?
Yeah, so the question is you don't always use, so you do sell the RTK on the mapping drone and you use it, but you don't always use that for the spray drone. Correct. You might only be half wrong, I mean, that's okay. That's pretty close. That's better than what it normally would be. But honestly, if you really want to get that precision and you really want to thread the needle, and honestly, sometimes that's one of the things you're doing. I have a good data set that shows, I have 4 power lines going across the field, right? I mean, big power lines, transmission lines, and 2 substations, and hog buildings, and everything in this field, and guy wires. And I flew every acre of that field with total confidence. So that's something you can do. But you can only really do that when you're on RTK. I wouldn't have that confidence with just GPS. That would be a little bit. There's some fancy stuff you can do. Again, we don't want to get in the weeds too far there.
Okay, in the meantime, the data set processed, and maybe some of you will say, hey, they talked for like 15 minutes, and it took 15 minutes in the background. We didn't even see that it only took like 2 minutes, a bunch of frauds. Trust me, it's like that, and we will do some more live processing where we'll leave it open the full time later on. But we just wanted to get done with kind of the boring stuff before we could go to the actual software. But there's still some more thing we need to talk about, and that's actually the flight setting to produce such a clean, crisp data set. There's not much you need to know, but there are certain important parameters you need to be aware of. So maybe first, how does such a mapping mission look like? I mean, it's kind of a bit like a spray drone application. You come to the field, you bring your boundaries or you digitize them at the edge of the field, and then the drone just takes paths over the field, but at a much higher height to make the map. Then you retrieve the data, you process it with, for example, Pix40 fields, and you do your analysis, and then you loop it back to the actual machine to do some spraying. So this is a really important parameter. It's the image overlap. So basically, if you want to stitch a map like we do, like what we call like an HD map or an ortho mosaic, the images need overlap because, I mean, you can't really stitch something which has no overlap. So that is really important to get a good map. And there are two parameters. That's the front overlap. So it's when the drone flies in flight direction, the overlap of the individual images. And that's the side overlap. It's a path-to-path overlap. And front overlap is kind of nice because you can have it relatively high without impacting the flight speed too much. But side overlap, that really cuts into your mapping efficiency. So you only want to get it as high as needed and as low as possible. I put you here some safe settings, so they will generally always give you a very good map, but you can play a lot with the side overlap and double or tripling your mapping efficiency. Maybe, Nathan, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say, generally speaking, in the fast mode of Pix40 fields, you can have a lower image overlap setting and get away with kind of murder. Because the way that mapping algorithm is working. So you guys can push that. I've heard some of you say you've pushed it as low as 20%, I think somebody.
Like you mentioned, like 30 to
Yeah.
20%.
I don't know if I would
No.
advise 20 or 30, but I would say, 50 sounds, possible and stuff. You're going to see some more artifacts in the image, which are just those distortions because you're seeing the sides of things. But for the most part, it's going to work for your types of stuff. If you want to see more what it looks like and have less artifacts and do a really good job, that's 70-80. And if you're going to do accurate processing, like the 3D stuff and everything, you're going to want to do that 70-80 for sure. And in some cases, you might even push it to 80-80 with like orchards and stuff with tall trees and things like that, okay?
Okay, then another important parameter besides the overlap and the main driver of mapping efficiency is flight height. So the higher you fly, the more area you can cover. And I think Nathan is a big proponent of flying the maximum allowed altitude because it gets things done fast, right? So if you fly at 400 feet with this M3M, you can map about 5.6 acre a minute. But if you want to do like weed detection, then you go into the limits of this drone and you actually need to drop it to about like 160 feet, which is 50 meters or even lower. And then that really cuts into the mapping efficiency. Yeah? So then you are looking at 2.2 acres per minute with such a drone. So you need to be really careful not to overdo it and only acquire the data and the flight height, which is really necessary.
I would add the other way to overcome this if you wanted is you would change the sensor out. We're giving an example with an M3M, but if you had perhaps a P1 sensor or something like that with a much higher resolution, 60, that's 3 times as much as the M3M. So if you had a higher megapixel sensor, you're going to have that same resolution at 400 feet. So if you really wanted to do weed mapping at scale, you might have to choose a different drone. That would be one of the things you should think about.
So you can see some examples, and I'm sorry, this slide here, it's still meters, and if you are like me, like for me, feet means nothing. So probably for you, meter also means nothing. But yeah, let's look at it. So here on the left side, you can see that's 25 meters, so that's pretty low. Do you think, how many feet? How much is it, like 100? 80? 80 feet? Yeah, you see, you have a very nice resolution. If you double it, it already gets murky. If you get higher and higher, it gets murkier and murkier, and that is what we call it ground sampling distance. So how many distance one pixel in the map actually represents. Yeah? And depending on what you want to do, you need to be aware of what GSD you need. And for example, if you want to detect something which is 1 inch, and you fly with a GSD of 1 inch, then this 1 inch will just be 1 pixel. So you would always need to look for a multiple of what you actually want to detect to even put it on the map. Nathan? Was it good? Yeah. Nice.
How's the
Well, it's got the same sensor essentially in it with maybe a little bit sharper settings because they've changed some of the algorithms. Other than that, it's exactly the same 20 megapixel sensor. There's a few technical
Yeah,
improvements.
the problem is there is no M4M. There's only an M4E and an M4T. They did not do a multispectral version. So for mapping, you would need to take the M4E because the M4T has no mechanical shutter, and that usually produces way worse maps than the E variant. A big downside for the thermal drone, actually. It still works, but if you are into mapping, you should use the E variant. But the thermal still works. So the maps will not just look so crisp because it has an electronic shutter, not a mechanical shutter. Okay, maybe final words to give you some idea when to use what GSD. Again, it's in centimeters, doesn't mean anything here in the US. So like 2 centimeters is kind of lower than an inch. So that you would need at least to map like individual weeds and do your stand counts, like 5 centimeters, like 2 inch. So that gives you like patch detection, crop damage detection, and like 20 centimeters, that's like 8 inch or so. That's everything like border problems for boundary mapping. That's generally fine. So just to give you a slight idea about what GSD you should aim at. Okay, now we got the boring part out of the way, which is necessary, and we can go back to the software. So we just processed here our nice research station, and I would say before we go into the single features, because we are still at processing, we may show some satellite data import because that somehow goes together, right, Nathan?
Yeah, you can go ahead and start pulling that. Out of curiosity for most people here, what does your internet speed look like when you're at home? What's that? Yeah, what's your normal 0? What's everybody got? What's everybody got for internet source at home? 70. We got some Starlink. 400-ish. Okay. You saw his slide earlier, I think, at his presentation. Maybe did somebody see that? Just how much time it takes to upload imagery, and just how much of a difference it is to send data up. When we talk about upload, right? Not import, but upload. So when we're importing in here, the speed is substantially better, right? We're just taking, we call it sneaker net. You take the card out of the drone and you put it in the side of your computer. It's the fastest speed you can get. You just transferred 4 gigabyte of data in 2 seconds. Pretty good, right? So that's why we can process so fast at the edge of the field. That's why we don't have to leave the field. Yes?
Do you have recommendations on computer speed and everything? Because I'm assuming you need a decent computer to do that.
Great question. So do we need a decent computer to do this type of processing? The answer is kind of. You can use normal computers, but not Dad's 1998 Windows, laptop, or, well, what if there was a laptop, really? No, you want to have something decent. I typically suggest using like XPS systems or things like that, but anything with a GPU, an NVIDIA specifically, or a MacBook. Mac actually has a phenomenally fast processing with this software, but also you have to make sure your GPU is enabled for Pix4D fields. Many of you that have fields, I want you to go home and check your settings, or if you have them here, look under 3D settings for NVIDIA, type in NVIDIA in your start menu, go to the settings, the 3D settings, and make sure the program Pix4D fields is set to high performance. If you don't, you're probably losing 30% in processing speed, maybe even more. On a Mac, you don't have to. It'll run on a Mac desktop very well. Yes?
When you get the pictures with your drone, warp or de-warp?
Very much de-warp. Go with the warped, the setting. Don't check that box, please. If you do it, we're going to be doing double corrections, and you're going to see some really weird stuff happening.
Yeah, maybe for the audience on Zoom, that I think there was a really important question, like should you have de-warping on or off? You should have it off, because otherwise it breaks our photogrammetry, and then all the data can be shifted like 10 feet or so. So make sure to turn it off. And you see that it's off, so you have some vignetting effect at the edge of the image, like little black shadow, and then you know it's off. That's exactly what we need for good photogrammetry. So turn it off, please.
Yeah, Pix4D processes raw data, not pre-processed data.
Okay, I would say we continue here with the satellite data. So I pulled in some satellite data for the research station. You can already see that it's satellite data, so that's Sentinel data. That's included in the software, so it's free to use. It's made by the Europeans, by the way, so they do something. You can go back in history up to, I think, 2017 for certain locations. So if you want to look, for example, how a field did in the past, because you want to draw some information from it, or even make a prescription map. For example, right before maturing of corn, you can use it for a prescription map to plan the seeding based on yield potential zones. So that can all be done with satellite data. So satellite data should be used to basically tell you where are anomalous zones in your field and where you may need to task your next drone flight. So I will pull the satellite data in now.
You don't need a lot of internet to do this. You do need to get internet to just pull the satellite data, but you could use a very minimal connection. It's not very heavy-duty data. So this is very fast if you do it.
But here you can see the downside of the satellite data. So that looks more like cat food from above, while like the also mosaic from the drone, like, I mean, that's a super crisp and nice. You can see everything. And we flew it pretty high. So the M3M does a very decent job to get you high-quality, awesome mosaic. But again, you select the right tool for the job. So don't go out every time and just map with the drone because it's fun, because it actually costs quite a lot of money if you break it down per acre, this map. So if you make a drone map, it needs to have a return of investment. Yeah?
I would point out right here, this is a good example of looking at the difference. I mean, let's zoom into those power lines, please. The number one reason for drone wrecks is what? Power lines and trees. How well can we see those power lines in the satellite photo? So, you know, some satellite data is a little bit better than this, but most of the time you're just going to see the pole, right? And then maybe if you're lucky, you'll see a wire. How many of you been to a field and you didn't find the pole until the drone didn't come back home? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the farmer swore there was no telephone poles or power lines or anything back there, but my experience tells me otherwise. So yes, this when people say, do I have to fly the whole field? Well, this is a good reason why we should be flying our whole field, right? Because we don't know. Sometimes it happens that there is a power line crossing there, or there's an irrigation power line in the back corner that we didn't realize. Those are the things that are drone killers. Those are the things we don't see. And when you're flying fast, like a 30 or 40 mile an hour machine, how fast can it stop? Just fast enough that it normally barely cuts it in half. It's one of those things like obstacle avoidance is not that good that it can make the drone fly and defy physics. It has to slow down, right? So
Nathan, look at this. There's a white car in the satellite image and in our drone image. What's that?
I think these were taken at the same time. Wow, that's
Crazy.
pretty good. So this might be a very direct comparison, but look at where that power line is. You see that power pole in that picture? Look at the one in the left there. It's halfway in the ditch. We talk about geopositioning and issues with satellite imagery. If you're going to draw your spray boundary for your drone, how close are you going to put your spray boundaries? I'm going to stay the heck away from that, right? Because I don't want to spray that close. I'm not sure which direction it's off, north, south, east, or west. And I'm not sure which direction my drone's going to be off. So see how big of a difference that can make. So this is why we're talking about this, and I have a feeling that's a lot of the reason why you guys are sitting in this room too.
Okay, what do you think? We start with some image annotations we pull in from the day?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
So it's not only about drone map, it's also on delivering context. And the simplest thing you can do with a drone map is to annotate it. So you can either annotate it with points, right? You can annotate it with lines. For example, if you want to measure how long that fence is.
You ever try to do setbacks in the field? You have beehives, gardens, sensitive crops. This is a good tool for figuring out the distance between you and it. I did setbacks last year from beehives. It works really well.
You can also measure the areas.
You ever have an insurance issue, hail damage, drowned out areas, spray drift? You want to figure out how big your garden is going to be?
Oh, I use it for gardening planning, by the way. It's very good. Okay, now I will import some geotagged images we did with the drone and with the phone.
So these are grabbed from the ground, or you take your Mavic out and you take non-native flight. You're taking pictures at images, and I don't like to walk a lot, so I'll send the drone back to the corners and take pictures of things to get a picture that I can see it. So you can get in really close and get a picture of that crop issue, that thing, right? And get a picture
That's
of
me.
Julius sitting at the car. We have, what else do we have in here?
I was processing at the edge of the field, by the way.
Yeah, that was truly edge processing.
So that's something of the research plots there.
So what do these images do for you? If you're making a report for your grower, if you're trying to send something, if you're trying to do insurance adjustment, if you're trying to do a research project or just scouting in the field, these are the things you take pictures of. Last year I took pictures of where I sprayed fungicide and where I didn't spray fungicide. It tells the story. So when you look at the map, like an NDVI or an NDRE or something like that, this is how you color that picture and send it to your grower and say, look at what I did. Look at what's going on. Pay attention here. Look at this. Look at that. This is a really great tool for those types of things.
So it does not only stay inside the software. So if you did all those annotations, all those work in providing context, and you want to share it, I think the file everybody can kind of open is like a PDF report. So you can export this data as a PDF from Pix40 fields, and that would look like this. So you get the auto mosaic, you get all your annotations, all the markers, notes you did. You get a nice table of it, so that's perfectly for reporting with third-party stakeholders. And you even have nicely the image annotations together with where they are on the map.
We didn't mention you can also count now. So if you annotate by clicking, you can count the objects that are in an area. Say you're missing trees, maybe you're missing other things, you could do that. Another thing that PDF report is good for is, does anybody ever want to show their grower what they flew or how many acres they flew and sprayed? This makes a really great report to show that to them.
Okay, Nathan, what do you think we show next? Like some boundary digitization?
Yep. So we'll have Julius go through here now, and he can show, maybe on that pasture, you could show how to draw out the boundary there. You kind of saw how he did it when he digitized the annotation. It's a lot similar. And let's say go ahead and start drawing, and then maybe screw up on some of it and show him how that works. So the user interface is really easy on this. So say you accidentally click on the wrong area and you wish you wouldn't have. I normally fat finger things if you're using a trackpad or something like that. And I would suggest if you are in the field and you're doing this, you want to bring a mouse with you. It's way faster with a scroll button. It's just, it sounds silly, but it'll save you a lot of time. But if you do screw up, you can always just drag those points and delete them. But you can see it doesn't take very long to draw the boundaries, to delete, to change. You can edit it, go back again, whatever. It's very easy, very intuitive.
So I would say we're missing some no spray zones because there's a waterway here. So we do that. So we add here a hole to the boundary. Because that is an area we could, for example, pass with the drone, but of course we shouldn't spray into it. So we need to take it out of the prescription.
What if I had another field beside there?
Yes, you could also do that. So if you have a subfield, you can just edit it again. And you have here a subfield. You can just create
So he hit the plus button up there in the top corner, and he's able to draw another field. So, if you're in Missouri, Kentucky, or other places with some of these smaller fields groups, that one in the back corner, you can make a group of fields, 5, 6, 7 fields, and they can all be named Mom's Back 40, like the farmer wanted it to be. So it's all in there.
What are we missing, Nathan? We have now a boundary, an outer boundary, an inner boundary. What's missing? Obstacles, exactly.
So we have those power lines to the north there, and we definitely don't want the drone to hit those. So an obstacle is a layer that we shouldn't violate. That's the goal, right? So most drone manufacturers, including DJI and XAG, have this thing they call an obstacle. But whoops, you missed something there. There you go. Don't miss that one. That's the one that causes the trouble.
That's pretty nasty.
So you can see how important it is to have that GSD, and it's easy to see. Now he's being pretty generous on this obstacle. I would be even closer, but that's okay. I think it's fair. All you're doing is drawing those obstacles, and that's just going to tell your drone, whoops, nope, you still missed it. Look back in there. Top corner right there. Yep, see that angle?
So there's an overlap, right?
No. Look there. Everybody else see it? Julius, you haven't been flying drones fast enough. All right, here we go. That's the one that gets you right there. So, yeah, you get that corner mapped in, and now you want to zoom in and go around your border. Let's do a real quick check, looking around. This is something I always do, is I take a quick sweep to just double check, make sure I didn't miss a telephone pole, power pole, wire. That looks like that might be important. You see how you kind of miss these things, and we don't pay attention to them in the field sometimes, but they do look a little different from above. But I don't like hitting trees, and I don't like hitting, other obstacles in the field. How much does it cost you guys when you're down a day? Commercial sprayers. What's a day worth to you? About $5-6 grand, right? Depending on how many drones you're running. That can hurt in the back pocket really bad. It's not the parts bill. Parts are cheap sometimes, but that day down, that's what costs you a lot of money. That's why we're spending the time here and talking about this. So does that make sense? We got the obstacles mapped. We've got this. If we would have just went from mapping to this, how much time would that take you? So you're saying it's like maybe, let's say 15 minutes-ish, right? Okay. How long does it take to mix chemicals? Yeah. How long does it take to set the drone up? Takes a little bit of time. It's all a little bit. Setup time takes up time, right? All that time while you're setting up, that drone could be flying, right? All that time while you're waiting around, you can digitize. It's going to take a little bit of time, but that, 5-10 minutes? Not getting parts, not being in the field, not getting something done, that's going to cost us, right? It always costs us. So when it's time to make hay, we kind of really have to keep going.
They can say it takes like 2 acres a minute.
I mean, if you map boundaries, we are looking at like 5 to 6 acres a minute, because you don't need to fly like super low. So that 2 acres per minute was if you fly at like under 100 feet.
Normally my perception is on 160 acres, which is what I normally think in, is about 40 to 45 minutes flying. If I fly with the chief pilot up there at 20, you're what, 20, you're maybe 10, 15 minutes to fly 160 acres? Yeah, there you have it. So if you want to, he's definitely pushing the limits of this program. I'm trying to give you safe operation parameters, but he's been doing it successfully. So I'm not going to argue with success. So we don't have to fly with that high of overlap is what we're saying. And when you do that, you can map a lot of acres really fast. To import, we'll show you the import process. It's very simple. It depends on the platform. Depends on the platform.
But Nathan, when we talk about time, maybe let's look a bit into the future. So, I know you think, it is annoying to manually digitize the boundaries, marking all the trees, the power lines. So we thought about how we can improve it, and I have here like a build which is not yet released, so don't get too wild up. So it will still take some time, but we're working on an automatic boundary detection, and I hope it doesn't crash right now because that's a super alpha feature. So this is a feature where you just click, and then it automatically tries to delineate the boundary for you. Yeah. And that also works with obstacles. Right, for example, if we zoom here into this tree, so that would be pretty annoying to digitize like manually, like accurately. But with this new tool, it should be actually quite straightforward. See, it automatically gets it what you want, and then it auto merges everything. So that in the future, we hope that will save you a lot of time to do this kind of annoying task.
What's everybody think? Is that helpful? Yeah? As soon as you guys get your checkbooks out, we will be working right on that right away. We're good. We'll keep working. The team's working very hard on this one. This has been something that we've been really excited to show you guys. If you're paying your subscription and keeping up with the software, you're going to be a benefactor of getting these things. If you've been a subscriber of Pix4D Fields, I think we can all say we've watched Pix4D Fields grow every single year in massive quantities of features and in richness and depth. And that's a testament. Most companies you send a subscription to, right, you never see anything happen, right? And I really have to give credit to the team in Berlin. They work very hard. And we're not talking a massive team here. We're talking some very, very talented people that are working very hard.
And the short, we will not bill you extra for this feature. So that will be included with the update when it comes, and then you can use as much as you want. It's the same with every function in the software, so there's no limit. Like you are not charged by the acre. You buy the license, and then you can use and play around with it as much as you want. So Nathan, I would say now it's time for some magic. So I promised we also do some more live processing. So we flew a bit closer to this pasture here. It had some weed infestation. So I say we process it and then try to find all the weeds, right?
Yep. So this was a pasture just in the south east corner here. There are a lot of yellow flowers out there. I can't remember the weed. Anybody know the weed in the pasture, yellow flower? Buttercup? Okay, so we're going to identify some buttercup out here that we've had. Buttercup. So we're going to have a little bit of fun. This actually worked very, very well, and it's a great example to show what the new enhancements. Now, this is one thing you may not know, is some of you may have used Magic Tool in the past, and you may have not had perfect results right away. Guess what? If you have selected and shared your data with Pix4D Fields, that has enhanced the algorithms, and in this new version that's coming out here, you're going to see this level of sophistication that it's actually working at right now. So right now you see Julius has gridded the field. He's setting up the grid size, so he's just setting up a cell size that kind of reflects the size and target of what we're trying to do, not the size of the individual flowers, but something that's manageable that we can use to select them with. You can shift and move this depending if you're trying to do this with like wheat crop and tram patterns and other things like that, or traffic patterns. Or if you're working in an orchard with trees or with permanent crops and stuff like that, you can shift this grid to fit the size of those objects. I won't get into the details on that, but that's one of those things. Again, one of these nasty yellow stuff, buttercup, it's buttercup. Anyway.
Let's not pollute the training data.
It's called nasty. Wonderful. So yeah, we're going to do, So we're going to show some magic here. Now, keep in mind, this is an offline tool. You're doing this on the edge of the field after you processed it without internet. You're doing this without internet. You're not paying a subscription fee per acre to do this. You're getting it included with it. And all you do is you click the things you want and the things you didn't. Can you see how fast that's working? This is a very fun video game if you've played it. So you just click the yellow things, and normally you go into different areas. You're being really fast. You got to slow down for the people. There we go. It's not catching up on the monitor, I don't think.
I'm ex-gamer, so sorry.
Yeah, so he's going through these. But you can see every one of those. You see how it has one in each cell? It's not missing things. Zoom out. If you look back, you would think that it missed something or that it's giving you false negatives or positives. If you zoom in at some of those areas where you think it's not actually there, it's there. That's how good this is. How many clicks did it take you? It took you 8 clicks to do that. So no matter what your cropping system is, maybe you're no-till, maybe you're strip-till, maybe you're conventional, maybe you're regenerative, you can have any cropping system in here, any crop, anything, and it will learn and process from what you touch and do. All you have to do is know what you're looking for and click it, and then click the things you don't want, and it'll actually find it. That's how it's kind of, we call it auto magic, right? It's fantastic. What could we use this for? Spot spraying, right. If I had a great big boom and I wanted to cover that field, I could go out there, right? If I had a drone and I could load the coordinates and send a variable rate prescription, I could go do that. It's a great tool. It's a great tool. We could use this for replant decisions in our cornfields or bean fields after a flooding event. I can create a prescription in here and send it to my planter on my John Deere. Anybody like driving planters back and forth and trying to find replant holes? This works really good. We can also edit this. So if you don't like an area, or you want to maybe put a buffer in, we could hit, say, you know, sometimes more weeds are next in more weeds. Maybe we're looking at water hemp or Palmer amaranth, and we want to make sure that we're putting in a big buffer. We can go further. It's just that easy. It's just literally clicking and playing with, it's like playing with paint. Yes?
Can you set like the percentage threshold that it would pick up to the mark? If you had like replant a certain percentage or weed density to a certain percentage?
Yes, technically you can. There's one more step to do that, and that's something I could talk to you about. It would be done in the prescription. So you would identify the individual first, or the opportunity for individuals, and then you would set the thresholds in the operation layer. Okay, so you can see what we did here. We buffered it and smoothed it out, because most drone applicators or most equipment can't spray individual squares. That's quite advanced, unless you have like a sure spot or something like that. You could go across this with the boom and it would knock it out. Oh, this is for anything. So if you have a multispectral data set, if you have a RGB data set, if you have green on brown, or green on brown works very well, or if it's looking for a specific weed, or if we're looking for, like I said, a deficiency or an issue in the field, like I found pH issues, you can click on the pH issues. If you have anything in that field that you can see that's different than what's there, you can find it. Or it has a multispectral signature that's different.
Here's a nice question from the chat. We had it also in the last days. Do I click on the weeds or do I click off the weeds? So yeah, it may be a bit ambiguous, like the I want is actually what you want to kill, and I don't want is actually what you want to preserve in that context of spot spraying. So yeah, you just need to remember it. So I want is actually what you want to target.
Yeah. That would be a great feature request. Thank you.
You want to go back?
No, he wants to toggle it, do an invert.
You can with the prescription map. You can import it in a prescription, then you do a reverse.
Oh, invert, yeah. Okay,
Works.
so there's always a way to
Yeah.
do it. We can turn this into operations, boundaries, or obstacles. Normally, I just put it as an area annotation. That way I can use it for multiple things depending on what it is. You give it a name. Down at the bottom there, you see that? Learn based on my data. You guys said, hey, this isn't working for this one thing that I'm doing. It's not working for the one thing. You turn that on and you operate it. This is going to give us permission to have that data. We ask for this. We don't take it without you giving permission. That goes to you, or that's going to go to the central server. They're going to evaluate and figure out what it is we have to do to improve that algorithm to make it work. Next revision, it'll probably be in there. And again, we all have different cultural practices in our fields. We all have different soils. We have all sorts of different ways that we farm. And so making a machine algorithm that's based, just a single machine algorithm that's just the same for everybody doesn't fit for Africa, for Australia, for Europe, and for Iowa, or wherever you're based out of. So it's important that, this is something that you guys can do in your own field, and you don't, again, have to have internet. It's a very powerful tool.
Okay, now we have the boundaries, we have the obstacles, we detected some buttercup. I would say let's plan an application, right?
Depends on how you say that. Anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and make an operation. So what is the operation exactly? We're trying to create, we're going to do something with the data. It's not enough to just sit and look at a map. Is everybody tired of just looking at maps? Yes, I'm done with it. I want to do something with it. Operations are executions. These are what you're going to do with it. We can do drone operations. We can do planting operations. We can do large sprayer operations, right? So operations are what we do to do an action.
So the first step to plan an operation is obviously to select your boundary and your obstacles, because that's basically the base of the application, because you need to know where you actually want to apply. So that's what I'm doing here, is I selected my outer boundary, I selected my obstacles, and those will be included into the final prescription. Then it asked me what kind of annotations I want to import. Remember, that's what we did with the magic tool. But you could also manually draw something. Or use a vegetation index and then go into a zonation, but we go here with the spot spraying. And now again, you can define like the target application grid.
What would you set this based off of? Sprayer width, spray swath, right. Equipment, section size. So if we're dealing with a large boom sprayer, you might have a 20-foot boom section or something. If you're looking at your sprayer for your drone, it's normally your spray swath width, roughly.
Is that accurate enough to work on like a PWM nozzle sprayer that's running 20-inch sections?
Yes. I mean, again, this comes into geolocation and making sure everything's right, but yes. And it also kind of depends on how the company that we import to deals with the data after, because some of them will sample that data and pull it in differently, and some of them will use what you give them. It's a little bit different depending on what monitor you're using for like deer and other things, because sometimes they downsample something. So you might have a block here and it'll spray a huge area. So it's kind of mix and match. That's like 2600 to depending on what monitor you have. So anyways, there's different ways to do this. And again, same thing with planters. You know, if you have individual row control, if you're doing variable rate with your planter, this works also for variable rate planting very well.
Nathan, why is there a rotation here? Why would you want to rotate this whole thing?
If I had an orchard, maybe, if I wanted to do that, possibly. Or if I had tram patterns from maybe, you know, maybe I'm doing wheat and I have traffic patterns in my field, that would work out really well.
Ah, I know. He doesn't know the answer because he's an American, because the fields are all north to south and not like in Europe, like everywhere, crazy. So,
and I also have square fields too. So, but you can see in here, you see how this illuminates which cells are active and which ones aren't. So this tells you whether you're, you know, you can change your alignment, the way this is set up. You might fly the field this way, and so you might set your angle at that. So that might agree more with the way that you're applying with your drone.
yeah, you should try to align the angle with the application direction. That's both true for like ground rig and for spray drone, because that reduces sampling issues. Because I mean, we are still operating here on a grid, and if a GPS receiver is like a diagonal of the grid or a part of a grid cell, then it can, yeah, spray something which it shouldn't do. So try to align the grid with the main application direction. So now we have our prescription, so it created like a on-off map basically, so everything which is transparent would not be applied, and everything which is, what color is it actually? Is it purple?
I'm colorblind, so don't ask me.
Then we turn it black and white, so now it's black. So I would now need to assign a weight. So what is the common weight for spray drone applications?
Let's say 3 gallons to the acre for 3 or 5 gallons for herbicide.
So you assign that weight to that zone, and then you already get all the information you need, like how big is the area, what's the total amount of gallons you need to spray, what is the average weight, and actually the applied acreage here, you can see.
Does anybody find this to be very helpful for chemical mixing? Yes. Yeah. Does anybody see this issue with see and spray as well? Sometimes if you load up, I don't know if anybody's running See and Spray or any of those products, but if you load up for the spray to go out and spray a field, this is the difference between planning and then doing reactive. You might have a full tank of spray by the time you're done, right? You might have not used up all that spray. What do you do with that product? Well, you just turn the boom on and you spray the whole thing out until it goes out. I mean, you didn't save anything, right? So if you know how much you can spray, you can plan adequately when you go to the field. You can mix up the right amount of product. You can mix maybe a little bit more, because maybe we're going to use a little bit more. But knowing that number is a big deal, especially if I'm doing replants. Again, I go back to that situation. If I'm doing replants, what's the one thing you don't know? I just throw a bunch of bags on the back of the planter, and I hope I have enough. Then I call Dad, and I say, hey, I'm still in the middle of the field, and I had way more acres than I thought I did. This tells me how much I need to go. This is the difference between planning and then just going and doing something. It's much more effective.
I think I missed one important thing.
Yes.
You might need to go back on the swath width. So if I'm doing herbicide, I always go tighter
Mm-hmm.
for more overlap. So let's call that 25 feet, 24 feet.
Okay.
Where was that?
Where did we set the swath width? Oh, yeah. So he said, for those that are on the Zoom call, he normally sets his swath width a little bit tighter for herbicide and for other use. And so where was the setting for swath width? It's one of the first questions it asks you. Well, it'll ask you which layer you're going to use, and then the next one where you can move the grid and set it up and down and all that stuff, that's where you set the grid size.
And that was the 5 that he chose.
Yeah, he just put that in there.
So that would be my 24.
Right. And you can see in this example, you can use Magic Tool for a smaller thing, and then, this is what I call zooming in to zoom out. Sometimes you zoom in to see whether the weeds are there and to find them, and then you zoom out because you don't have a piece of equipment that can hit that little spot, right? So you want to maybe use a bigger swath width, and that's why we would do that. Or perhaps your equipment, hydraulic valves and electric stuff isn't able to just ramp up to high speeds and low speeds and turn on and turn off in just milliseconds. Some nozzles can, but not everything. So you need to give yourself, that room for error, because you're going to miss the target if you try to set it too tight.
Okay, we had a question from a gentleman here in the front row. How can you invert it? Let's show how you can invert it. So what you can do here, you have an option which is called fill all empty cells. So it's all transparent cells now. So I could say now, new weight, fill now. I put it to 3, and I delete the black one, and now I have it inverted. So that's how you do it.
Neat trick. Yeah, now we can allow the buttercup to just proliferate.
Some preservation. Okay, I think now we should talk about how to getting it actually to a machine, right?
Yeah, we need to go someplace. Now we've done something or we've planned something, we need to go someplace. So next thing we need to do is our exports.
So in the export menu, if you want to export an application or the targeted operation, it's called operations. And that opens you a menu with all your vendors. So for the spray drones, we have the DJI Agras and the XAG drones. We have some vendor-specific formats for Amazoni and Hardy, but most of the tractors, they can actually consume as a generic file, and it can either be a shape file, an ISO XML, or a GeoTIFF. Or let me go one back. So if you want to get it to a John Deere system, we also have like a connection to the John Deere Operations Center, and you could shoot that directly to the Ops Center. But if you want to export, let's say it for an XAG drone, in this case, that would be considered as a variable rate mission because it has a lot of like no spray areas, and like the boundary format of XAG, I figured, can get a bit of overwhelmed if you have a lot of small no spray areas. So here you should actually select the variable rate mission.
Now some of these obviously are vendor specific. Now he said no spray zones. That designates that hole as a no spray zone. If you set it as an obstacle, it's now an obstacle. What's the difference between an obstacle and a no spray zone? Yeah, one you fly through, the one you don't violate, right? Don't get them confused. Be a bad story. But yeah, so that's maybe your highest risk click right there if you accidentally choose the wrong one. But yeah, you want to be able to fly through a no fly or a no spray zone. You want to be able to basically not go into that obstacle though. Sometimes we set those in terraces, right? Terraces, they have trees. We don't really want them to fly through there, so that might be why you would choose that option. Now, one thing, now this field has a lot of coverage, right? Because it had a lot of coverage of the buttercup. If it was more sparse, what you would see, especially in the spray drone or the spreader drone, if you're spreading, it's gonna optimize its flight path. A lot of them now have programmed in more flight path optimization. So are they going to fly the whole acres if there's nothing on the left-hand side? No, it's just going to choose to fly the right side, and it's just going to choose a flight path to fly those little groups, and then it's going to jump and do a little group, and then it's going to be done. Very efficient, very, it saves a lot of time, especially if you're doing, like I did urea last year over, areas where we had a lot of rain. We saw a lot of denitrification, so I went in and I put down, I ended up spreading 10 tons of urea last year. So it's totally possible. I used satellite image. I didn't even use drone imagery. I used the satellite because I had flown my boundaries before, but it was a great rescue strategy to save some of those areas that I was losing nitrogen in.
Okay, and then you would just go to export. It would create a file and that you put on the SD card and put it into the remote control of the drone.
Wait.
Or for
This is for DJI or XAG?
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
And for XAG, yeah, explain it.
So
for
XAG is going to go to an online platform and you're going to upload it. This is where you would need internet. You're going to upload it to their platform. You log in. You click import. You would import the VRA map first or second, and you would in the boundary first, and then you would. On the back end, you pair those together. DJI is similar in their VRA, except you can put it on an SD card. You put it on a little card, and then you put it in the top of the remote, and then you just import it. And then in the remote, you're going to select the boundary and the backdrop for the VRA. Yes.
Sorry, can you export this mission inside in the remote control? I need you help me with the control, calibrate control point in the start in the map.
Yes. Calibration point?
Yeah, calibration point in.
You're talking about offsets.
I see everywhere in the map. I can do push in one place. Is the first flight the drone? Go to fly a calibration point. If you stay 30 acres more there, I go to 3 acres there.
Yep.
If stay very, very long, they can start the mission or inside to the track, fly to the drone, first point in the calibration point, and come back.
Yeah. So question is, he's asking if you can really, I think if I understand you right, you're asking for offset correction or calibration or ground control. This would be, XAG has this, I think DJI has it too. You could use their base station. You set it on a known point and you say, this is where I am. You can do this through the software. You'd have to export a point in here. And it's kind of a rather long, I don't want to give a lot of explanation on this because it's fairly detailed. But yes, you would be able to do this. I'm not going to encourage everybody to do this. I would just prefer that you use RTK systems because they're consistent and repeatable over. But I know in areas where you don't have internet, where it's hard to get internet, you don't have Starlink or something like that, that's where you're going to have those problems, and you're going to have to do offset corrections. You can do them, but I'm not going to cover that probably. We're not going to cover that in this short little course.
Okay, I would say now it's time for some interactivity with the crowd, and we do some share to cloud, right? Yeah,
this would be a good idea. One of the great features that we have, and this is a great tool for all of you to use, is our share to cloud tool. The share to cloud tool, has anybody used this? Yeah, a few of you have used it, good. This is a great communication tool. It's a tool that, say you go to the field and you fly the whole field and you see something you want to go look at. Maybe you want to scout the field. You can share this to your phone by going to share to cloud. This uploads the data to the cloud, and then it gives you a share link that you can do it. Now, you're going to need internet for this. You will need internet, but you will not need nearly the level of internet. It's the difference between uploading 5 gigabytes of data to the cloud and updating 100 megabytes or even 30 megabytes. Huge difference. We're going to upload just the picture. So if you guys do this right now, you can scan this on your phone. This isn't going to give you a virus or do anything funny. You just scan this and then go to the web page. You can do this with your growers. So say I flew a field. I just got done. I can't figure out if that back corner should be sprayed or not. The farmer is at the lake and he's enjoying the day, but he told you to go spray this field 2 minutes before he left, and you need to figure out how do I map this field and how do I ask him. So you could fly this, map it, and then you could send this to the farmer and you could say, hey, Joe, Jerry, whatever, am I supposed to fly this back corner? Is this the way the boundaries look? You told me it was 42 acres. I'm coming up with 60. Is that right? He can look at it. Why in the heck are you in my neighbor's field? Oh, whoops. Okay, I'm going to spray over here. Anybody spray the wrong field? Maybe we shouldn't admit that. We still build them, right? No. That's a real thing. We want to validate our fields. We want to make sure we're going in the right area. If you're mapping ahead of schedule, you can even send this to the grower after even, when you're done spraying. It'd be better to do it before, because if you do it after and you did spray the wrong field, that wouldn't be good. But this is a great tool for that. But it's also, if you want to scout, if you want to look at the digital surface map, if you want to do this. I use it for scouting quite often, honestly. But if I also want to show somebody the condition of their crop, you mapped it anyways. This is a value add. This is a very simple tool, and it comes with the software. So I would take advantage of this and share the fields that you're mapping with the grower. It shows that you were there. It shows that you did a great job, and they get a free map out of the deal, which is a great deal, or you could charge for this. It's a great thing that you can do for the farmer. All right, there was a question. Yeah. Right. We try our best to confuse you as the consumer. Pix40, yeah, right. That's why I asked about who had what, because this is confusing at times. Pix40 Cloud is a delivery system. It's a cloud-based processing system, but we're leveraging it as a display tool. So we're kind of hacking our own system to use it to do the online stuff. I mean, the cloud team isn't super impressed with our ideas, but we do it anyways. Because it brings value. It means something, you know. Like, we could build a whole new cloud system, and that wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? So Pix40 Cloud is just a great sharing tool. You can do a lot of cool stuff. If you actually use the Pix40 Cloud system, you could also, I mean, I don't want to muddy the water here, but if you get the advanced, you could do time-based comparisons on there, and you can do volume estimations. You can do all sorts of stuff. It's really cool. But it's a separate product, and if you want to do those features, you got to pay for that subscription. So, but very basically with fields, you can do the share to cloud, and it's a very, very helpful and useful tool.
But I think the volume calculations that even works with this here, like included in fields. I'm not 100% sure, but as soon as
Don't
you
tell the cloud team,
Yeah,
but yes,
yeah.
you
I
guys
hope
have
they never
access.
listen,
You have
but-
access. So if you process an accurate, and you want to do, see, I do tiling and a lot of other stuff, and if you want to do dirt estimation, silage, pile, volume estimates, or any sort of thing like that, you could technically process an accurate. You could you could upload it to the cloud, and then you could do a volume estimation on it. So, okay, so you got a little extra there. You can do anything with this. The nice thing, what you need to know is, you see that little GPS in the bottom there? Could you point that out on the screen where you click the GPS? Because it's not always obvious. If you click that button, it asks you, do you want to display your GPS? That's what gives you your position on the map. That updates, and you can see where you're at in relation to the target that you put on there, the thing you circled, the thing that you wanted to go to. So you use this not only to show them the map, but they can experience the map. You can walk to that area. You can see it. And so if you're doing this in a scouting workflow, you're going to use this to send this to your friend or your agronomist. Your agronomist walks there. They snap some geotagged photos, right, or something. They come back, they say, oh, wow, you're really deficient on sulfur or magnesium or whatever it is, or just nitrogen. I took soil samples, tissue samples. This is what I found. You can bring those back into your report. Remember that PDF report? You can fill that report out with more details. You can add those annotations. You can bring the images in and put them in the report. There's nothing better than just seeing a variable rate picture on the screen, but when you can back it up with data and pictures and things, that PDF report is worth some money. That's worth some value. So this is a great way to bring value to your customers and to your own businesses.
Okay, I would say we look at a few questions from the chat. So there was one question, so can we load an NDVI layer and do the selections? I think that's related to the magic tool, and here the simple answer is yes. You can also import any layer or create any layer and then use the magic tool on top of it. Will the magic tool be more accurate with multispectral imagery since there is a higher spectral resolution than RGB imagery? Depends on the use case, right?
I would say, well, it's not higher spectral resolution because, well, spectral, yes. You're going to have multiple, yes, not spatial, sorry. You're right, higher spectral, but it's less spatial. So there are some details, like if you're trying to look at the NDVI for pest damage or other things like that, it's gonna help you. So if you just looked at the NDVI or the NIR band and you used Magic Tool, you might be able to find aphid damage or other things like that, or spider mites or things like that. Works very effectively, because that's one of the things I tasked the engineering team when they made this to do that. So if you do see something in the near infrared band that's identifiable and it's a pattern, you can use Magic Tool to find that in all those images. So yes, you're going to get more. You could get more out of a multispectral.
I think the next question is a bit related to it. Can you switch between an RGB map and a multispectral background map in order to help locate what you want to spray? I think that refers to the clicking in the Magic Tool. So you want to switch between the RGB view and a multispectral view.
You didn't show that tool.
I guess his question is related to the Magic Tool, but there is a comparison tool, so you can do this like off the Magic Tool. So you have like the split tool, and there we put now here's a multispectral layer. You can see, so that is now multispectral on the right, RGB on the left.
Maybe show the satellite NDVI. You did show this with the, maybe we showed this with the satellite layer, but show the NDVI on there. So you can select whatever one you want and adjust. You can even adjust the histogram in the bottom there. Show them that. So you can change. So we could look at something, we might want to drill down. We might want to, maybe we see something in the RGB, maybe it's an issue of mold or some sort of issue or just a disease or a color that we see in the RGB. You could target that with that NDVI and see if you can just hone in on that spot, and you can pinch down see how he pinched that down? And now you're just looking at one crop species or one thing. That's some of the things you can do with that. And when you get that, now we can turn around and turn that into an operation layer or a zonation.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's show a zonation.
So first I create a new boundary. Let's see. We do a zonation here for this field. And by the way, the one with the comparison, so that was kind of a feature request. And yes, we have this on the roadmap that you can switch in Magic to the layers. So yes, we know about it. Thank you. Okay, so I create a new boundary. And now we want to do a zonation, right? We want to see where this pasture grows well, where it grows not so well. So we go back into operations.
Can we make an index map off of a...
of the multispectral?
Oh, let's just do it with an RGB. Maybe I don't have the money to buy a multispectral.
Okay, let's do that. But first I think we should trim, because we don't want to process the whole data set, so we only want to process the AOI of our actual object. So what I will do, I will go into boundaries.
You would notice this if you loaded the map on your phone when you guys brought that in. That was a very index of the whole entire map. What did you really see in that picture? It just identified the different objects that are in the field, right? That's not a great way to analyze your data. What you need to do is you need to trim based on the field, so you're just looking at the field that you're working in. This will save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches. Just trim what you're looking at so you're purely analyzing a corn crop, a bean crop, a pasture. Don't analyze the trees, the roads, all that stuff, because all you're doing is you're basically showing where the trees and the roads are, and that doesn't help you. So now that he trimmed it, he turned on the very index. You saw how easy that was. Now we can turn around and we can use this to make a zonation map. And he could play with the colors to make it look a little different, but I'm red-green colorblind, and maybe it already looks fine.
I can see it fine.
Good, good. You could do this with dry, you could do this with seeds. Maybe, well, you can't go back, but we could have used seeds, so maybe if you wanted to go
We can change
out
it
there.
later, it's no problem.
Yeah, or if you wanted to do in pounds, maybe we're going to overseed this pasture, or do something like that, or maybe we're going to fertilize it, putting on something to wake it up this spring.
And here was a question before, can you do it based on a threshold? And that would be the stage in the software where you can do it, so you can exclude cells based on the coverage now. So I can pull this all the way up so that only cells which have full vegetation index cover are selected. So that would me help if I want to do certain things with a threshold.
This is where it gets to be a lot of fun right here. So there's a lot of options in this. You can do about anything for this prescription. This is one of the funnest prescription editors I've ever run in my life. They built a UI that's very interactive and very simple. You just click what you want, color schemes. That helps me. Thank you, Julius. You can choose equal intervals, quantile, or manual. So if you want to set manual ranges and make breaks that you want it to do based on the index value. You could also, you can see on the left that detail. The best button over there is number one, setting the number of ranges. So if you just want a simple binary on-off prescription, you can just set it to 1. If you want to do, don't go crazy in this. There's no system that plants 7 different zones. Honestly, that's crazy. But if you want to see your planter get jacked up or a hydraulic valve system go crazy, put 7 values in there and watch it just go rear. It's not going to work. So 3 zones, yes, and see how that smooths it out. This looks more natural. But if you want that high resolution, that really definite map, you can leave it on high detail. It's a little noisy sometimes. But this looks organic. This looks a little bit more like our fields. Again, this is up to you. You can do this on the edge of the field with the grower sitting right there with you, and you can make this decision. I've done this. I've flown the field, I've mapped the field, I've processed the maps, and I can get it done before the side dressed rig ever even makes it to the field. And the farmer can sit there and watch you do it the whole time, and you can say, do you want to put a high rate on this or a low rate on this? Or you can sit with the agronomist and you say, what's a good rate to put on here? Is this good or is this bad? Do you want the high or you want the low? Most people have a budget they want to hit. Let's, maybe we can play with that here. So let's try. You have those commas in there, goodness. Anyways, it's very European at this point. But create the operation layer. You could even pinch off the top up there, but we won't go into that. But here's what's wonderful about this. Let's say you get the zones you want. Now comes into how many gallons or pounds we want to do. He switched it to pounds, good. I want to put on a fertilizer, and I only bought so much fertilizer, right? So I can still use my average fertilizer budget. It's what I plan to use, but now I can come in here and I can say, hey, I want to put on, let's say I want to put on 2,000 pounds. We can make this, we can just play with this. I wish. Good idea. Maybe next time.
At some point.
Keep paying the subscriptions. We'll keep getting them in there. You can write with us with these ideas. It is something that honestly Julius takes very seriously, and the team over there. They love the suggestions. If you can give examples, that's really helpful. Then they can give the coders something to think about. But you can see how many pounds we get, and if you want to hit, that's 5,000 pounds total, right?
Oh, I did it, yes.
Yeah, you got 5,000, didn't I say? Well, anyway. I said 4, so you got to get
Four?
re-budget.
No, 5.
Well, let's go. Let's drop it down. I mean, you can see how you can mess with this, and we can even and say we forgot a zone and we wanted to put it in there. You know what? I wanted to propose to my wife. Can you draw? Oh, that's too much to write. Just put a smiley face in there, would you? We can have a lot of fun too, by the way. This is how easy it is to edit your zones. Remember, you got that one corner, and the farmer says, "Oh no, don't put anything down there. That's a disaster. It's a garbage dump. I just pour fertilizer in there. Don't do it." Guess what? You can just go in there and it's paint for farming. I mean, this is. I don't know if the games influenced our developers or what's happened, but somehow we turned this into like a video game. So this is a lot of fun. You can do whatever you want. Since when have you ever had this amount of control over your fertilizer program or anything that you've done? Most of you all have these types of tools. Most of your farmers have these types of tools, but they can't use them because they can't export anything to them. This tool puts the power in your hands and in the agronomist's hands. You can do so much with this tool. Do you think you can make $1,600 of value in 1 year out of this program? Yes, I really do. I really think you can make more than $1,600 a year running this program. I think you can easily capture this value. Question?
Yes, an interesting question, and I think we can go back a bit in time, Nathan. I think you know that field, because the question is, can you give an example of how you would use a magic tool for replant? And I have one of your fields which was flooded.
Oh, that was a disaster.
And maybe you can go through it, because, I mean, that's your stuff.
Well, evidenced by the water, this was flown right after, and you can see we had 7 inches of rain. So obviously the water didn't get out. And so before I even go to the field, the water's still in the field, I can actually create a variable rate or a planting prescription. So we could use the operation. There's 2 ways to do this. We could use magic tool, which is what they asked. So let's go with that. We can come in here. We can grid this by my planter. Yeah. And so while the ground is still wet, this is the benefit of drones, right? While the ground is still wet, we can come in and we can select the things I want. Maybe there. And things I don't want. Whoops. That's not the shift key, that's the caps lock. European keyboards. So if I don't agree with this cell, I just click on it and it keeps getting, you want to have the same amount of points, oops, I shouldn't do that. You want to have the same amount of points roughly as you do positives and negatives. But you can kind of zoom in here, I can hit the space bar. I'm not far off. I might want that one, right? I'm not sure how this is doing in here. But, you can kind of get the idea here. Maybe I want to go a little bit further. Okay, that's basically a replant map for the most part. I can clean up, and if I say I don't like this area, I can get rid of it. So I could come in and say delete. I'm not sure I'm going to want that one. I don't want to do these. No way, no way, no way. Okay. And if I want to smooth it, I could do one size up. Nah, but I can drop it down. See how I make that smooth? I didn't really like that though, so maybe I'm going to go back and reset. Okay. I see a few that it didn't select in here, which is probably an oversight of mine when I was clicking, so I can fill those in, right? Okay. So I've got this done. I've got my map done. Now I'm going to go ahead and output replant. Make sure to learn from that. Okay. Now I've got my replant map, and I can come in here. Now I can go to my operation, and I can do it this way. And I can say use existing annotations, hit continue, and I can do this and hit continue. And it doesn't take me a terrible amount of work to create this map. Again, we want this to be 40. That's roughly the size. Okay, that's great. And I'm gonna put in seeds. So I need to come back here. Did I miss that setting? Must have. So seeds. I'm gonna put in 34,000. That's probably gonna drown out anyways. Let's just do 38. Free channel seed, guys. I'm telling you. So yeah, we've got this put together. You can see how this is already done. I could hit export now, and I can go to share, John Deere. I can go to my field, and then I can send out this as a prescription map. This is gonna go to my planter. My planter is gonna ask me, do I wanna plant this? And I just load it, and now it's on my monitor, and I don't have to just aimlessly drive around my field. I can just go to the areas that need to be replanted. Does that make sense to everybody? Good question, excellent question.
Here's another question, RTK question. For an RTK workflow, do you need to upload anything special when processing, or is the RTK data embedded into the picture file?
This is very drone specific. On the Mavic 3 multispectral, which we talked a lot about here, it's already tagged in the photo if you turn the RTK on. Remember that you have to flip the switch up in the top corner. If you don't, it's not RTK. Just because you have the RTK thing on top doesn't mean it's RTK. It means you still have to connect to that RTK base station somewhere. So I don't want to get crazy into that topic, but that's a very important thing that you might want to consider. But yes, if you have RTK on and it's enabled, it's going to be in the photo. Now, Wingtra, Quantum, other systems, you have to tag the photo. You have to go a post-processing tagging, and you have to have a base station. So there's some things that you have to know about that, okay?
And there's another question, the feature where it automatically do the boundary for you. Can you show where that feature is in the software? No, I can't, because it's not in the software yet. I'm the head of product, I have a special build here, so that's beta, only I have it. So sorry, it's not yet in the software. That's about to release like in Pix4D 2.10, and we are at 2.8 now, so the next version is 2.9. That is roughly next week, so you have to wait a little bit longer. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
I think there's a good question at the bottom there. I see the orthomosaic advanced option is equal to what we can get. You want to show them the data from... So the question is about elevation data and orthomosaicing. Is it as good as the two, like the fast processing and the advanced options? What does that look like? So if you go to here, we have our... No, if you go to where's the pasture, and then the accurate, yes, accurate DSM, and use, yes. You can see here, look at the difference in the digital surface model. It takes longer to process accurate, okay? It takes longer to do that triangulation, that level of calculation, but you end up with a much, much more detailed DSM, digital surface model. That's the topography of the ground. So you see how different it is when you look at it? It even picks out the power poles. Look at them. See them? You see the individual power poles? That's how detailed it is. That's very good. Yes? Yep. Projected acres, yes. Should. But we're using UTM projections and not your state coordinates, so there might be some differences, yeah. It's going to be better than WGS 84 or something like that. That would be a very wrong way to calculate area. So that's a good question. Good question. Also, I would say with large areas of elevation, and I'm talking kind of mountains, and we're talking about vineyard applications and things like that. Some of you in here are in California avocado type territory or things like that. We have some pretty significant elevation differences. accurate might be the only one you want to run, because you want to have really good, accurate, fast is going to work very good in flat territory. It's going to work good in those areas. But if you're trying to do something with heavy terrain and stuff like that, you may want to do accurate processing. Yes?
So page 40 field elevation, how does that sound compared to Mapper that I'm already using?
It's a little bit faster than Mapper, probably, and it's just as detailed as Mapper. It's not giving you a point cloud or anything like that, but you can export the elevations out of here, which is a very important part of agriculture when we're talking about land grading, drainage, irrigation, all those things that we do that involve typically water are elevation based. We can now export XYZ files out of here that are simplified, so it's not super dense point data, and you can take it into Trimble or into OptiSurface or some of these other things, so you can do grading for rice, you can do grading for waterways, or you can even do terracing or ditching or even tiling itself. So we're using it up in my area because we export water. But yes, question?
So I got two questions, and both of them are kind of loaded. So for your general vegetative index map,
Yes.
is there any talk of like an AI software where older farmers or older generations can't read this data that would recommend certain suggestions to maybe like an aphid problem or heavy fungus problem or
That is a great question. We
Yes.
have a feature in here, if you have been paying attention, if you have the software, that is, go back to that, what is it called again? Field Insights. Field Insights is an AI tool that goes through and it searches the it's using AI to go ahead and research that issue that it sees in the field, depending on, you have to give it some stuff, type of crop, things like that.
Planting date,
Some of those things, and through that it's using AI to go through a bunch of agronomy knowledge bases around the world, especially in your local area, and it's going to bring back information that means something to you. So yes, we have those tools. They're already in here. Again, this is in beta. We're working with it. Pretty advanced feature. I don't know if we're seeing anything else like this on the market, but take advantage of it if it's there, and it maybe could be meaningful to you.
And then my other question was, I don't know if we've done much thermal mapping, but if you do any thermal mapping, is there any way to, take a map a field and then a week later map the same field, and from there make those, maps transparent and overlay them to see if there's any consistencies?
So thermal is always tricky because it depends on environment. It depends on the weather. So did it rain the day before? Did it rain 2 minutes ago? Is the wind blowing? Is it a cloudy day, a sunny day? I mean, there's so many things that happen with thermal. Yeah, I can do that. I mapped a field for 12 hours in a day, every hour, to see what the differences were with RTK accuracy, and overlaid them and looked at them. The stuff you can learn in a corn breeding program is amazing. But the things that you got to understand is plants react differently depending on what time of day you take the picture. You have to understand all sorts of stuff with thermal. Thermal is so complicated. The easiest thermal image to look at is a bare earth soil map, which gives you a good example of like where maybe drainage is and things. The satellite image does a great job of this. If you pull in the satellite data, there's a thermal layer in there. So here's a free one for you. If you go to the thermal, if you look at your multispectral, if you look at your satellite data and you create a custom index in there, you can get the thermal data off of there, which is a very good tool for making variable rate prescriptions for seed. Because typically, we lose most of our seed in wet soil, at least in our area, and in dry areas, we put too many seeds. And I found in my farm this year that if you planted 27,000 instead of 37,000 on the hilltops where it was dry, I could get 50 bushel an acre difference. That pays me good money. Can I make back $1,600 in a year with that? Yes, I can do that. There's some money to be made. Got to use the tool. Question?
For people that aren't here, do you have like any training courses or videos that show stuff that's specific to setting up mapping operations for application drones?
Do I have videos? Yes. We. So, previously, yes, working for Pix4D, I've recorded a lot of different videos for this. Those videos are online under YouTube, and if you look for Pix4D Agriculture, you're going to see a bunch of those videos on the YouTube channel. I'm also posting them on my Airstrike channel as I go along. I'm going to keep doing advanced agronomy ones as the year goes on, because I think that's an important topic that we all want to explore. There's also great resources on Pix4D's support page, tons of guides, and there's also training courses that you can purchase from Pix4D, online courses, self-paced courses, but nothing beats being in the field, in my opinion. And if you want to do that, you guys can all feel free to reach out to me, or I mean, there's other distributors around the world, I'm sure, that probably do something similar, but I try to do something where it's a full-on experience like we did on Saturday with a group of you, and spend a whole entire day going through all these features one by one and practicing and working with them and experiencing them in the field, so you really get the idea of how this workflow. Because we've gone through a lot of information really quick here, and I don't expect any of you to retain all of it, but this is how, yeah, we look like a bunch of cattle. Anyways. Very good resolution, though. Other questions about those things? Yes?
Back to the DSM model, and this might be a feature of the cloud, but like when I do a DSM model for like a farmer for like drainage,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm adding annotations, like I cannot figure out how to do elevation callouts on the annotations without going in and looking at our data and manually adding it to the annotations. Is that something that you can do in cloud afterwards?
I would do it in fields before if you're trying to do annotations.
So like if you would add an annotation, like and drop a pin, you cannot get like the elevation of where that pin is.
Yeah, you can. Go to the digit. Oh, I think. Let me show you. Let me see. Accurate. So drop a pin on there. Drop a few. Tree. Just A, B. So those are the elevations. It gives you, so it queries the statistics, and if you want the average, you could even do an area, but it's going to give you an average and a standard deviation and that kind of stuff.
But if you don't have cloud and you're wanting to do like me, I was just doing screenshots and showing the farmers.
Uh-huh.
It's like you need a visual way, I guess, a good screenshot.
You can use a PDF report, right?
Oh, and did I mention on the PDF report, you can put your logo on there. You can customize it. You can put your logo, all your business information on there. So when you are sharing this to your users, you have the ability to add any of that information. It shows up in the report. Really nice tool. Other questions? Yes.
So, say you map a field and you lay out some no spray zones, and your mapping drone is utilizing Core's RTK protection.
Mm-hmm.
You send it to a sprayer that's utilizing a different RTK protection, like Tremble or Raven or Green Star or something. You mentioned GPS is be off from RTK. How far off is one RTK protection to another?
So the question is, for the other audience, if you use two different sources of RTK, maybe, I mean, just completely different brands or something, how far could it be off? That's actually pretty loaded, because it just depends on the surveying system. If it's a different datum completely, you could be in a whole different world. I mean, literally, projection can put you in a whole, like, 10 feet off or something like that, or worse. And I don't normally see that. Normally, they're all using NAD 83 for their projections. Again, this is kind of mumbo jumbo if you're not really in the surveying world. But so that's why I just encourage, very simply, if you just use the same source, you're probably going to be okay, with a few caveats. But for the most part, use the same source, you're going to be fine. If you're using two different sources, you need to figure out what their coordinate system is. That would help you. Yes?
My follow-on question to that is how, say you're using Map 3 like most of the people in the room,
Yes.
how simple is it to translate that end correction that you're using like applicator back to the map? Like, is it easiest to set it up with cores, or is it a process to set it up through another subscription RTK service?
How easy is it to set up different types of, or how to, you mean to maybe put in the cores network? Is that what you're saying?
Like, let's say your sprayer's running Green Star,
Yes.
for example.
Right.
How easy is it to get those corrections fed back into the map?
Well, that's a more advanced question. I don't know if that's like coordinate translation and is a much more deep conversation. So I don't know if we want to touch on that subject. But yes, if you would have a green star and you're going to something else, they use a different datum, which is slightly off. Yeah, I don't want to go into that really. That's a bit further than what we want to go. But yes, there are different ways to tackle that issue. Not with fields, probably at the moment. Not at the moment.
Here's a question from the chat. I'm interested in using the software for research. How good is this for plot research?
Oh, whoops.
So I would say it's pretty good for plot research because you can digitize your plots, right? And then you get the averages and the standard deviation for each individual plot, and you can even export it as statistics, as CSV file, and then use it in your statistical workflow. So it definitely gets you started with plot trial. If you want to go more advanced, I mean, they're a very good open source tool where you can just take the map to and do all the analysis there. But if you want to start, it's, I think, a very good tool to get you there.
Yeah, and you can use this. These statistics are on all the annotations. So if you're trying to figure out how to compute whether this crop is better over here or over here, you could just circle those areas and you could look at the statistics in there and you're going to see what those are. Maybe circle that in the bottom there where they can see that statistic. I don't know. Put your mouse down here and show them. So see, you can see right there what the statistic is. It shows the area and the height. This is for elevation, so it's going to show the height. So the statistic is the digital surface model height. So if you want to see crop height, this is where you would get this. If you want to see crop health, you'd go to the NDVI and stuff. And these are more advanced topics, of course. But yes, you could export this in a CSV and put it in an Excel file, and then you've turned imagery data into basically nice tabular data that you can put and you can graph this. It works really well.
Okay, there was another question. Can you bring yield data into Pix4D fields? I mean, you could, but it's not as easy currently. You would need to get it as a TIFF file. If you have it as a TIFF file, then you can bring it in like just as any other index layer. But usually those yield maps, they come into shape format. And so you would need to do some conversion. That's maybe something we do in the future, that you can pull directly from the op center the yield maps. But yeah, we are still waiting on a bit more signal for that feature.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, could I use this for a drone for 3D maps? To fly a 3D map, yes. These are features that are currently being looked into with the manufacturers. Some of them will provide us those types of opportunities, some of them won't. I think there's some reasonable reason to think that will be a feature that we could probably add in the future, though. It does help, obviously, to anticipate those hills and valleys and trees. And so it does help the flight pattern completely. We won't control the flight path in those areas because I think that needs to be the manufacturer. That's a liability I don't think probably Pix4D needs to take on. But yeah, there's some other features like importing the orthomosaic into possibly XAG. That's, I know, a big request, and possibly the digital surface map as well, and some of those types of things. So a good feature, that's a good question. Well, stand count's a good question. It's been something that's been worked on for a number of years. It's a big request always, and X is it, if you know Pix4D, you know it doesn't like to do a bad job. As many times as we keep trying to do that, it just seems like the resolution hasn't always been there because you have to fly so low to get those types of projects. Although it is we're starting to see that, and so with that, I think we're going to start seeing tools being developed for that. You can see that we're able to click and do counting. That's a first step. We'll see some other things possibly.
In the next conference, we will have it. I say it. You heard it here.
See if the programmers get that excited. Yes.
So if they develop free planification for a spot spray,
Yes.
so select just the plant we want to apply.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
I made all planification for the fields.
Yes.
How we want to apply the select choice my plants.
You want to just spray just the plant?
Yeah,
How big is this plant?
maybe cardo. I don't know how do you say here. I told you before the purple flowers
Yes.
in the middle of the pasture for the cow farms.
So very, very targeted spot applications.
It's easy for the.
Yes, so Magic Tool, we found it.
It's easy.
Yep.
Magic tool, we found it.
Okay.
But when I go to the spray,
Yes.
it's the problem. But this is I need you for advice.
So I would say, yeah, so question is we've got very specific weed, we can see it, we can use Magic Tool to find it. How do we spray that specific area, that exact target? Some drones, now this is dependent on drone manufacturers. Some of them, I would say like Leading Edge, if you've worked with them in the past, they do have a spot spraying. Helio has the ability to spray in specific spots and do that, and they can take point files and you can do that. They also normally have to have a different nozzle on them to do that type of spot spraying, targeted spot spraying. But most people still go a little bit less granular, so they're just going to use that square or that size, and then they're going to turn the drone on above it and spray like a variable rate application and spray over those areas. You might spray a little bit more, but you're not spraying the whole field. So like an XAG, DGI, or a lot of these other major manufacturers, they're still going to, they're going to coarsely spray. Or you could use maybe a right spot sprayer or something like that that has really, really tight, like a big boom sprayer even. Depends on what we're talking about and different things, but there are a lot of different ways to address that problem. But I really think it's not really Pix4D Field's limitation here now. Now we're moving into more the manufacturer, yes, the manufacturer and their ability to control what they're spraying exactly. It's a great question though.
How we can fix this? We need to less for working
Spray width?
spray with. I need to less.
Yep.
Maybe how you can fix this problem in the software with the manufacturer. But I am feeling of the burger in the bread.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck in the middle. So how we fix this with the manufacturers? Well, I think you can make it known to your manufacturer wherever you're buying it, retail. I think that's important to give feedback to the manufacturers. I think they recognize this, but sometimes they don't hear it enough from us. I think a lot of us do want spot spraying applications because we just want to spray individual things. But sometimes,
Excuse me, you can give me one data how many prescription per country for give this date for DGI, or maybe this is the reason for not advance this develop?
oh,
There are many prescriptions in every country, so that's for sure not the reason. Might be other reasons. So, yeah, you need to exert, I guess, some pressure and let it known that you want this feature. We have many users who approach us and exactly want that, like this real spot spraying, that the drone flies from patch to patch and does not cover areas where there's no need for spraying. But so far, we could not make any progress with DGI or with XAG, so they need to come up with some kind of open format to allow us to push this data into their system. So we would love to do it, so we all maybe let it known that we want it.
Those two still flying the whole field, is that what you're saying? They're flying it and just turning it on?
How is it with XAG, Nathan? Because that I don't know.
there's actually optimization. So if you put points on the map, they've added points in XAG. You can drop points and it'll go to those areas and it'll optimize its path. Helio's the same. Helio has the ability to do that where you can drop points. I did this back in 2015 or 6, not 15, think it was like 2018 I went out with them, and we did this in a pasture to go find weeds, so we were very, very effective in that. The only way to make a DJI do it is you kind of have to hack it, and it's kind of like a really hard thing to do, but you can make it spray a spot. You just have to give it a small enough little field to do it, and it'll go and it'll spray it, but it's not fun. Like I said, there's different systems that work different ways, or you could use a Hardy sprayer. That's another thing. They have a boom that's quite amazing, actually. They load very, very granular. It'll spray little weeds. I mean, very small weeds. They have very high accurate positioning of the boom, and they keep control of it. So they have some pretty cool stuff there. But so is Bosch and all these other systems that are building this very accurate type of sprayer. So there's different tools for different things. It depends on how big and what type, if it's pasture or what we're talking about. Good question. Great question. Yes.
Can the drone optimization be loaded into the John Deere operating system, where the operator in the track on his display see that as an base map?
I think that works now.
Yeah.
You can push the auto mosaic into the operation center for sure, and I think they can now pull like new layers into the monitor.
I think they're getting there, yeah, on that. But you can push this map to Operations Center and get it. Well, I really like this because I can, and I'm a Deere guy from Iowa, but you know, I can get that map in my app and I can overlay it with my planting population or my variety map, and I can walk to those areas and troubleshoot. If I got a seed emergence issue, if I've got something that's showing up in the map and I'm not sure what's going on, I rewind to last year's pass. I can look at the things that I've done. It's a very powerful troubleshooting tool, because when you see it in the imagery and then you line it up, that's why I record every pass with my equipment anymore, because you're not really sure. I don't remember what I tilled at, you know. And you see some of those machine patterns, because I use the measuring tool in here and I measure and I'm like, that was exactly 45-foot swath, you know, and it's repeatable across the deal, and I'm betting that was my field cultivator. You know, those are some things that you learn. And again, you might make this mistake 1 year, but you don't make this mistake like 7 years in a row. If you eliminate, you save yourself a lot of money for 7 years if you can find issues like that, mechanical issues, things like that. But that bringing the map in and overlaying it with all the data that I have from planting and spraying and harvest is a super great tool, super great tool.
Okay, I would say we have time for one more question and then we conclude, because it's already pretty late, right?
Yep. Any other questions?
Do we have any hope of getting a queued processing tool?
Queued processing tool. This sounds like a commercial type of work.
What is it? I don't know what it is.
Like he wants to be able, can we put them in queue so we can batch process?
Batch processing.
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it would not be very hard for us to do, but we would need to find a way to, let's be honest, to monetize it in some way, because if we do that,
It's a subscription. It's probably an add-on is what it would be.
But but then somebody could use it and process like the whole world in batch. And people are already doing that, and maybe there are already like some AI agents who are doing that. So we need also to protect a bit our IP. So I know this. This is a wish for many of the hardcore users, and eventually it will come. We just need to figure out how to do it, probably also from our perspective. Okay, one more. That's a final question. Make it count.
So you talked about version 2.9 coming and then 2.9. Could you just give us a little more insights into what features are coming with those next two versions?
Yeah, so 2.9, that's the version which comes out either this week or next week, depending on how many bugs we still find. So 2.9, that focuses mainly on the improvements of the magic tool. So we have a completely new AI model trained on 2 years of data, which will go then live, and that will rapidly improve then in the next versions, because it can be trained much faster. There are a few little additions like quality of life features, like this location finder, where you can type in like a place you want to jump, especially when you have a satellite user, you can jump to a place to then draw your boundary. The satellite tool will also be more robust, so it does not fail so many times anymore. We added now in 2.9 the export for the water management, so if you want to get the DSM layers out to a field grading or a land design software, that is possible. We made it 30% faster for the very fast already Mac users. So if you have a Mac, you are in for a good treat. And some new cameras, like we did some fixes for the Centera cameras, some new DJI cameras are supported. In general, the next version will be much more robust if you process cameras the software did not see before. So if you have proper images, it will now always work. So you don't need to call us anymore and say, hey, my camera is not supported. It will just give you a warning, like not officially supported, but it will still process. So those are basically the things in 2.9. And then 2.10, it will probably evolve around this automatic boundary detection. Yeah, and I don't want to share anything more to don't spoil it.
For all those that don't have Pix40 fields, and hopefully some of you are interested in it, feel free to reach out to us. There's also a free demo, 15-day free trial online. If you need help with that, please reach out to us. Personally, myself from Airstrike, if any of you are looking for licenses, anybody in attendance to this conference, I'm willing to give a percentage off to you guys because I think you guys are super valuable customers. And I want to see you guys succeed in this. And if you want training, also reach out as well. I think it's well worth the time spent there. So hopefully you guys learned something. Honestly, really thank you for you guys being here. I know a lot of you signed up for this. And those online, thank you for being here for the program.
Yeah, thank you very much and see you next year.